And we're live. Awesome. Well, welcome to the Eat Well Move Well radio show. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. My guest today, Joe Kaufman. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend. It's great to see you.
Yes, sir, Damian. Excited to be here. I'm pumped to dig into some great topics together today.
Yours is one of the easiest intros. It's so good when a guest gives you this. So for the listeners, Joe Kaufman, former Navy SEAL and BUD/S instructor. We're going to go into what the hell that means for the listeners. But I love your company, the founder of the Warrior Calling, an elite performance coaching and mentoring business, and that you train men to be SEAL ready. So a little bit to unpack there, and in our world we all understand those words, but for the people that are more civilian side, we might sort of translate some of those words as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the background of elite performance and all of that is you have to have a foundation, your values of where you come from. And I think a lot of people, they get caught up in they want a title, right? They want to become somebody. And the first thing I would say to everybody here is, I'm just an average person. There's nothing special about me. I think a lot of people put a lot of types of either jobs or achievements on a pedestal, and a lot of times people are like, yeah, he's been there, done that. I am a student. I learn from everything as much as I can, and I'm always growing. So I think one thing as you think about becoming an elite performer, and this foundation of what I would say is that's critical. It's just being able to say that you're a lifelong learner and able to grow and learn from everything. So yeah, I'm pumped, and I'd love to dig into the background, and we could talk about SEAL teams and BUD/S in general as well.
Yeah, we will do that, I think, a little bit, just to paint a picture. And I can't believe I'm in this place. I'm in a shooter and a firefighter doing some kind of interviewing, but your mind's on like three levels. So I'll try and unpack it for the listener. So you're a former US Navy SEAL, so the Navy Special Operations Forces. Let's go through BUD/S, because it's just a different name. I mean, some of the people out there may know SAS selection, especially because it's been on TV a fair bit. But let's go through what BUD/S is, basically the time frame, and just a gross, maybe that first phase of BUD/S.
Yeah, absolutely. So basic underwater demolition SEAL is the BUD/S acronym. So if you think about the going into special forces, you're going to have to, or your special forces, SAS or BUD/S become a SEAL, you have to go through a pipeline to weed out those who shouldn't be there or don't want it. And so that's what first phase is. So it's that first part of BUD/S. It's 3 phases, but first phase is that one that weeds out guys. So it's a challenging 7 weeks that you have to go through. And that includes a week of Hell Week. I think a lot of people have heard of that. It's basically a week of where it's nonstop training, where you're literally going from one evolution to the next, which could be running. Maybe you're running with a boat on your head, you're carrying a log, you're doing surf passage in and out of the surf, potentially just running for forever, and you don't know when it's going to stop. So you're just always going. But that's the first part of BUD/S. And I came in I went through that, and I went through the whole BUD/S experience and became a Navy SEAL, and then served the teams. But I came back as a second phase instructor. So I kind of came back in within that diving phase, which happens after first phase. But really working as a second phase instructor, I got to go and work with guys, putting them through Hell Week again. So going into first phase, watching people go through that is an incredible thing for a human to go through, because you're just running all the time. Your body is at that breaking point. I think you really have to tap into that mental fortitude to be able to make it through something like that. You have to really want it. You have to have a strong why.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting I haven't actually interviewed a guest about the Navy SEAL pipeline. I've interviewed a lot of SEALs, but I think BUD/S is one of the longest pipelines. I mean, my selection was around about 7 days. The Green Roll SAS is 9 days. And different lengths for Delta and so on. But yeah, it's a long time. So you do have to be so mentally tough to get through that. And a lot of people don't realize what we're looking for is that moldable person at the end of it that won't give up, that will stick by the other person's side. You got swim buddies there, and also will have that self-discipline and self-drive to look at the next step.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's you're going to have to tap into a lot there, I think, for physically and mentally. But yeah, there's the main thing with having people go through that type of selection, where whether it's going through one over where you are or over here in the States, there's gonna be times where they build the pipeline to be such that it's going to be not going to be easy for anybody. They're going to have some type of challenge that they're going to face within that. But yeah, buds is a long time. It is 6 months, and that's just, people need to think of it as a 6-month job interview is kind of what that is, because it's 6 months of selection. They could weed you out even towards the end of that 6 months. So it's a long bit of time. And it does take a bit of training in order to be ready for that, for even your body prepared, your mind prepared for 6 months of the grind, where you not only you're pushing your body physically, but you're mentally going there as well, because you have to learn how to dive, you have to learn how to shoot guns properly, and there's an instructor on your back during the entire time, making sure that you're doing everything safely, but also evaluating you whether you have the right mental capabilities to make it through, and if you'd be a good fit in the team. So it is an intense experience, not something that most people really want to do. When they come up against it, they decide it's not for them.
Now that's a perfect segue, Joe, for what you do with the Warrior Calling. So you're now a civilian, you're out of the Navy.
Yes.
And you, as you said, literally in your bio, I mean, I love it. It's so succinct. It's great. You train men to be SEAL ready. You train civilians or maybe serving to attempt the BUDS pipeline. So let's talk about that. How did you get into that? What was your drive?
Yeah, I came out of being a SEAL 4 years as an instructor. So I left the command here in Coronado, and I was at 11 years in the Navy, and so the last 4 were spent as an instructor. And I loved it. I love training. I love teaching. A lot of my background within the SEAL teams was driving mini subs and doing the diving operations around the world. So that was kind of my background in the teams. So I wanted to bring that experience to BUDS. So when I was there as an instructor, yeah, you get to train them physically. There's the swimming runs and all that, which I love, but also training them to be tactical and be able to dive, be able to hit targets underwater and to know what they're hitting. And so that was my background. I was never a personal trainer, any of that before the military, anything. I didn't have any background in that. I went to community college for business before going into the military. So I didn't really have any of that, but I knew that I loved teaching and I wanted to help train up the next generation of warrior. And I left at the 11-year mark in the U.S. military, which is kind of that point where most people decide if they want to do 20 years in or not. And I knew that I wanted to do a couple of things in life. Wanted to finish education. I also started having kids, and I didn't want to be deployed like I was in the military when I have kids. It just was a decision I made. So I got out in 2017, and I decided I wanted to try different things. So I got my degree. I tried different jobs, but I wasn't fulfilled. So I just fell back on what I knew and what I loved. And I actually moved back here to San Diego and started just coaching guys on the side. And I started working with guys that wanted to be SEALs. They are, most of them would just reach out to me. They knew I had been a BUDS instructor and said, hey, can you coach me and train me to be a SEAL? And so it kind of just fell in my lap, the opportunity to start helping people train at this level. And that was in 2018, 2019. Then it just sort of blew up. We started a social media, account, and then we got a lot of people reaching out, and I just enjoyed it. I kind of built it as we went, but we set up a really great program with the experience I had as a BUDS instructor. I brought in 2 other former BUDS instructors to help me coach and develop a program for people to prep for BUDS or other special forces pipeline. And so, yeah, it's been a crazy ride over the last 2 years of just growing and helping guys prepare. So it's been interesting, that's for sure. And it's been a lot of fun, it's been very rewarding.
You used the word helping a couple of times there, and that's phenomenal. I mean, I have a gross outline of what I'm going to do in these interviews, what I'm going to ask and things, but the majority of my guests are there to help others, be it some a bodybuilding scientist or a scientist on performance. They still want to help others. And then you got the vets that I've interviewed. They're there to use their special forces experience and training in order to help others. But really telling there was, you there to train the next generation of warriors. That's really, really cool. So that segues into my next question, which was the difference between being a BUD/S instructor and prepping civilians. So I know from instructing on the courses for the guys coming through, same sort of thing, but different verbiage, how you train a military guy, particularly a potential special forces candidate, is vastly different than you talk to a civilian. So
right.
What was that like, just that difference for a start?
It was a big transition for me, to be honest, because I didn't know much anything else besides the military. And so when I got out, I expected it to, I think the big thing was I'm helping a client with his programming, with his coaching, his nutrition, everything. I tell him what is expected, and I expect him to perform and well, he can ask questions, but to perform regardless, to go out and make it happen. So I think one of the biggest things for me to learn was you're going to have to actually follow up with people and push people in the civilian world. Not that they're not motivated, but you have to find out what's motivating them. What is the drive for them? What is their why? Because if you're just telling them to do something, a lot of times it's not going to go anywhere. And you almost want that actually even more than somebody who's in the military or somebody who's in the pipeline, where you just tell them what to do and they do it because maybe they don't really want to do it. So I think the biggest thing for me to learn was, find out what makes them tick, find out why they want to do this. And it's not necessarily just because they want the job title, which I mentioned in the very beginning. It's not because they just want to become a SEAL or they want to become a police officer. They're thinking about, like we hit, helping people. How can I serve at the highest level? Maybe their why happens to be somebody in their family or somebody who made impact in their past. And I want people to realize that that's probably going to be the biggest driving factor in their success. So when I work with somebody who's not necessarily wanting to be a SEAL, I have to find out what it is they really do want deep down, because they have to have a strong why, or else they're not going to want to stick to the diet. They're not going to want to stick to the training plan. They have to have something that they really want more than anything.
That's brilliant. Coming back to the why, and I was trying to really listen on your answer around what that actually means, because people say, "Oh, what's your why?" But it's a bit airy fairy. But civilians do need. Everybody's motivated differently, but in the military, you've already been niched, and then into a special forces selection, you're already niched again, so it's a bit easier. I'll never forget, I was listening to a friend of mine, another guest, Joe Hortai. He was Australian SAS, and he interviewed a New Zealand SAS guy who's gone on to become a doctor, and then gone on to become I'll do the American term, anaesthetist. That's a bit easier than the American one. And he was, I'm going to get him on and just find out how to talk to civilians and to get the best out of them, because he was the anaesthetist on a helicopter rescue flight for civilians. And straight away he's on the ground going, "You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this." And everybody else is like, "Whoa, you can't talk to me like that." They were worried about to be gross, the sort of hurt feelings rather than the mission. And of course, this guy just went mission focused. So coming back to the reason I said that, the civilians why, they've all got different reasons. And if you hit that, then you can communicate to them, and then their comprehension goes up, and then their motivation's there. What a transition for you. Obviously it's successful. Is that what you deal with mostly as civilians trying to become SEALs, or is it a bit of both?
And there's a little bit of both. Most people, I would say, let me take that back. Yeah, I would say the majority of the folks that worked with us, probably 75% are trained to be SEALs. And the other 25%, they wanted to do either another Naval Special Warfare, like SWCC, the boat drivers that might want to do that job. We have people reach out for police or SWAT team. We've worked with those. Navy diver. So there's a few different, but I would say the majority of people want to train for BUD/S to be a SEAL. So then there's another percentage of people that want to train for other things. And then there's another smaller percentage of just people that want to train for fitness, and they want to train with the tactics and the training and the mindset of a SEAL. So that's a smaller percentage, but I would say 75% of folks are going to BUD/S, so they want to be a SEAL. But yeah, there is a small percentage of, and we're growing this as well. I think our main focus initially is to have the SEAL Ready program, and we've just developed a separate program for people that don't want to go to BUD/S. They don't want to be SEALs, but they want to train with the mindset, the fitness, the the development that you need to have for, just like you're going to Buds, but you have a different goal. So there's two separate programs we put you in just to pick, based off of your goals that you have.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I couldn't think of a better person or better skill set to have to train people to go to the program where you were an instructor. It's a great great framework. There's not many people doing what you do in America. I can think of Mark Devine as one other.
Yes.
With SEAL Fit. We talked at the start about mental versus physical. We've just really spent sort of a quarter of an hour speaking about all the physical stuff, and everybody always thinks it's that, but that's just to get you to the start line and get you through that crucible, through all those challenging events. And we really see it with I don't know if you've seen the show SAS Australia here. It's got Clint Emerson. He's been a staff on the show this season.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I haven't watched it.
Really interesting. I mean, it's civilians, and he hasn't done the celebrity one, but again, everybody thinks it's beasting someone. It's, yelling at them, making them do all these horrible things. But we know we're really looking for that mental toughness. What's that person showing us? So let's move on to the mental side of things. How do you train them on what you're doing with the Warrior Calling and not doing huge long events? How do you train them to be mentally tough and prepare their brain for what's to come?
Yeah, it's been interesting because we wanted to have that kind of, you go through a crucible type event where it's 2 or 3 days, and it's to see if you have that mental fortitude, because that's one thing you can go through, but we don't offer that. And so it's one of the things we've had to learn how to do, because primarily we train people remotely, so they're not necessarily with us here in San Diego. So that's been something we've had to deal with, and we've had to think about how we can have events that are not just focused on getting people to make it through something when they're being yelled at, but also mentally develop their minds so they are strong. They don't have to have somebody yelling at them. They're still going to perform. And I think that's what kind of the difference between what we do and what other programs might do, is that ours is transformation focused, the course that we have set up, because there's a lot of Huya events you can go to where you get fired up for a weekend, and that's great. I'm all about the Huyas and getting motivated, and I'm fired up. But those things, a lot of times they kind of fizzle out, and we have to be self-motivated. We have to be self-driven. And so what we set up within our programming, it is a longer time period. It's 12 weeks long that we work with people as just the basic foundation course, because we want to see transformation. We want to not just provide information, because there's so much information out there about training as a SEAL, just fitness in general, that everybody's on social media now and is somehow a coach or whatever. So there's just a lot of information out there. We didn't want any of that. So ours is you enter the program and you have a set amount of time. It's 12 weeks. And it's very intense 12 weeks to help you have transformation, to have you have results instead of that just Huya experience, which are fantastic. And I love those. I did one of those SEAL fits with Mark Devine as well. And they're great events, but ours is a little bit longer, 12 weeks. So you can really see somebody progress, because it's training. It's not just, we want to see if they can lift a log 1 or 2 times. We have to train them, because we know it's coming at Buds. We know what they're going to face there. We know they're going to be doing 4-mile time runs multiple times a week. They're going to be doing 2-mile swims multiple times a week. They're lifting logs and running with a boat on their head, which is probably the worst thing you're ever going to do in your life, is run with a boat on your head when you're cold, wet, and sandy. So we know it's coming. So we didn't want to just set up those little events and just, have the motivation for a moment. We wanted to actually see transformation over time, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be nutrition over time. It's going to be their sleeping, their stress management, the breathing work, not to mention their physical training. It's going to take some time to get their body where we need it to be, where they need it to be before they ship out, instead of being like 90% of the people that show up right now are just, they're not prepared for what's to come. So we didn't want to regurgitate what's already out there.
Exactly. And it's short-lived, because, the people do that and they don't do that course again. You've spoken about sleep, stress, and breathing, and it's brilliant. And it's just a perfect example of doing those selections. Actually, the physical is just the passport to get in there. You actually got to go do the work. This is some things we really should dive into. And it's so different than it was probably back when we did it. First off, breathing. Now, I did hear Mark Devine say they instituted box breathing compulsory into the pre-buds sort of instruction, and it made a 10% improvement in who got through. Is that about right, or could you tell us about breathing techniques that you guys are using?
Right. Yeah, they do teach them. I think it is during pre-buds, right before they start first phase. So they haven't even classed up. They want to give them the tools. They want to give them a foundation to actually make it through. So yeah, they've done the box breathing. I don't know the numbers, how it changed people that have learned that and then those who haven't. So to be honest, I'm not sure on the numbers. But yeah, they are doing that within training. I know in second phase, they do that as well with the students. They make it through first phase, which kind of weed out everybody physically. Second phase is the diving phase. And that's where you're also going to have to use your mind. They have to do dive physics. They have to learn how to put together a rig. They have to use their mind. They have to set up a rig. And that's another test too, is to see if they're mentally capable of thinking when they're under pressure, when they're underwater and they're being in stress, when you're taking their air source out and tying knots in their hoses, when they're on an exhale, right? Just looking to see how they react in that situation. Because yeah, it's not just the physical side of things, but once they get to second phase, then it's all the mental side. So we do the breathing work as well. We talk through breathing techniques. During first phase, they're in the cold water. So during the warrior calling training, we have them go through cold water immersion training and prep for that. But yeah, during buds, they're cold, right? So they get that cold water immersion to help their body, and they learn some basic breathing techniques, but nothing too in depth, to be honest. Just scratching the surface on breathing.
Yep. And again, pretty much you and I preaching to the choir, but can you, for the listeners, why is that important for people that want to be hard charging warriors? What is the story of this breathing thing?
It's obviously we do it a lot during the day and we don't think about it. But I think one of the big things, especially for me, is when I can control my breathing, I feel like I have some bit of control in my life, and I can calm my heart rate and calm my mind, calm my body, think clearly. And I think there's a lot of times we can feel stressed, we can feel the anxiety, and the only thing you might be able to do in that moment is do breathing. You can't, if you're in bed, it's nighttime, you're trying to go to sleep, the only thing you can do, you can't just get up and go for a run to get the energy out, or go lift some weight to get it out of your system. The only thing you really can do is going through some breathing work. Or maybe you're about to do a test. You're at school and you're up early in the morning, you're there in front of your work, there's a test, you're supposed to take it. Well, maybe you're really mentally brain fogged. Maybe you're up the night before trying to study for it. What you can do is to calm your heart rate, calm your mind, get clear, get focused, is do a quick breathing work. Could only take 15, 20 seconds, even if you just wanted to start the beginning of a breathing work session. And it'll calm you down. And that's one of the big things we want these guys to realize, is that you are going to be put in stressful situations. You're going to be put in uncomfortable situations, and you're going to have to perform under pressure. So if you can't handle that, if you can't take action, then you're not going to be able to do your job. So the breathing work is definitely helping them through training, but it's really to help them in their career down the road. So that's a big part of what we do in our coaching, helping guys out there.
Absolutely. It's all about finding comfort in chaos, isn't it?
Right. 100%.
Yeah. I was listening to a couple of SBS guys, so the British version of you, and they're saying, on the choppers on the way in to do a hit in Afghan, they're just doing their box breathing, and same deal.
Mm-hmm.
I teach that to a lot of different clients for different needs. Let's move on to sleep. Sleep deprivation happens. We put them through that, but it's such a crucial part of recovery. And I don't know if you know Dr. Kirk Parsley. He's probably left by your time. He was a SEAL, left the SEALs, became a doctor, came back to the SEALs as a SEALs doctor, and his role was supposed to be orthopedics, but it transitioned very quickly into performance, and he basically reverse engineered sleep. And sleep is where you recover from the day before. It's the only anabolic activity you got during the day.
Mm-hmm.
do you focus on sleep-wise with the Warrior calling into your clients?
We talk about it all the time. We don't necessarily have them track their sleep or their hours or their quality of the sleep. We don't go that deep with them, but we do hit it pretty much every week with them on the mentoring calls, is because it is so important. There's and also the things that can affect sleep when they're going through basic underwater demolition seal training. They're going to go through Hell Week. They're going to be doing dives at night, and they're going to be sleep deprived, and that's just what's going to happen in their training pipeline. It happens probably for every single pipeline. You're going to be sleep deprived, but in our training for that, we don't necessarily have them go through sleep deprivation. I'm not there to monitor it. I'm not there to make sure they're okay and all that. So I'm not necessarily having them do that. What we focus on is just making sure they get quality sleep now, because you're gonna have to figure out how to make it through sleep deprivation when you're going through it. It's not like you can necessarily build your body up to that point of being able to do a week without sleep. So we say, just don't worry about that. We're going to do the breathing work, the mental fortitude preparation to help you mentally be there and perform during that, but we're not going to put you in sleep deprivation to prepare you, because that's not going to be of service to you. But so we do talk about sleep, making sure they're getting enough, and helping them with the tips and tricks to help make that happen. A lot of these folks are young. They're young guys in their early 20s, and a lot of them they feel like they can go all the time. So I think one of the big things is just holding them back a little bit, making sure they're getting their rest and recovery in, because they're all very hard chargers. They want to go hard, and they kind of let the sleep thing go sometimes, because they just want to get after it in the gym. I get it.
Funny you say that. I interviewed Professor Nick Gill. He's the All Blacks rugby strength and conditioning coach. And he said some of the guys in there, you've got to actually hold them back, because they'll overtrain, they'll overdo stuff because they're so mentally on, and they get better results doing that. So you've nailed it for hitting that sleep side of things with them, and having the young guy focus on that is so good. I mean, how were we? We just we didn't have any of those tools, so it's great to pass on some of our experience, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know I look back and I'm like, I had none of this, and it would have been so great had I had a little bit of information, a little bit of this, and the guidance and mentorship. It goes a long way for these guys. The foundation, a lot of times they just don't have it. So yeah, it's been really rewarding. Absolutely.
It is amazing to see how Special Forces mentality has changed. So when I was in, remember when Skins came out, the compression suits?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we all got issued with them.
Yeah.
It was like the most brilliant thing. It was the most modern thing at the time. It was pretty cool. So they're looking at high performance, and then each individual operator would do high performance things themselves. But over at SAS Australia here, and it's common knowledge through a lot of different books and things, they've got a high performance cell, which is looking at all that high performance things. Every percentage we can get, just like an Olympic athlete, makes us harder to kill, makes us better at our job, and gets us home, hopefully, at the end of the mission.
Exactly. You don't want to be the same as your enemy, right? You always have to have the leg. That's the whole point of a military, right? Is to be better than everybody else, so you can you can protect your country, you can do what you need to do. So that's exactly how I think the NSW here, the U.S. Naval Special Warfare, how they're focusing on training now as well. They don't necessarily want a lot of new Navy SEALs, but they want very high quality Navy SEALs and people that they can take care of. They don't want to just have a ton. There's not a lot of Navy SEALs, so it's kept very small, just like most Special Forces units. And they do try to give them a little more knowledge and assistance on that, and developing their body and taking care of them and making sure they get enough sleep. I will say though, that being in the teams, you're going to draw from so much of your training that you have prior to that. So going through whatever selection or pipeline it is, and you're tired and you're miserable, well, you're going to be tired and miserable when you're in your unit. It's going to happen. So just, you got to take care of yourself is what I'm getting at. Everybody's going to have to take care of themselves. The military is going to try to do things they can to teach some breathing work, teach this or that. But I think everybody should take responsibility for themselves and just say, hey, what is it that I need to do for myself? I know that I have I don't have the right diet. I don't have the right nutrition in my life. I'm not sleeping enough. We just have to have the responsibility to take care of ourselves. So yeah, the military here is doing a little bit here and there, but honestly, it's not as much as I feel like they could do to help the greatest warriors. It is what it is, though. You got to take care of yourself sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Our motto, they think it was who dares wins, but it was really do the best you can with what you've got where you are.
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I'm just going to go back a stage to cold, tired, and hungry. You talked about sleep deprived, and really for that listener that is wondering about special forces, getting someone sleep deprived and getting someone cold and hungry, that's when you really see the inside of that person. What are they going to do? They're going to quit. Are they going to go selfish? Are they going to flip out, or are they going to be able to keep going? And that's important because on the battlefield, you don't know if it's going to be a 12-hour mission or a 5-day mission. And that's no exaggeration.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The unknown is, you have to be prepared for that. Whatever happens, because I think it's not going to be so structured. You're not going to know exactly how long you're going to be out there. So you might go into that and become sleep deprived because you're on target and you're watching something, you're on surveillance or whatever it is. And you can't just take off and leave, because if you do, then there's nobody watching the target or whatever the thing is. And I remember doing the SDV, the mini sub missions, and I was colder during those times, and I was a lot more sleep deprived than I was going through training, because you're out on a mission it's a 6-hour dive and you're cold and you had to prep for the dive before that. And then you have a lot of cleanup after the dive. There's a lot of debriefs to do and taking care of the mini sub and the mission and everything that went down. So it could be a full day and night between the operation and the prep of just going and not knowing how long you're going to be doing that for. So yeah, I think the sleep deprivation is just something to realize it's going to happen at some point, and not be fearful of it, is my recommendation, because it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And you'll roll through it.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's great what you said there. You know, what you did in the Hell Week and the buds and the selection, really you lean on that when you're on a mission or on a training mission, because it's normally harder, but you just use the same basic principle. I remember we're at stand 2. We're all standing on the vehicles, ready to do a counter-terrorist hit on a stronghold, and it was cold. I'm talking to a Navy SEAL about cold, but I remember my Nomex gloves. You know, we got leather on the Nomex back then, and that was sticking to the metal. and you're trying. I mean, it's that cold. That's your fingers. Imagine the rest of you shivering away, and then you hear the stand by, and you're boom. You're focused, and you've. That's just the mental fortitude, the mental focus that you learned in all your selections processes, all your training, and then you can deliver on the day, which is what you're teaching those guys with the warrior calling, I suggest.
Yeah, and they fall back on their training. So once, obviously, that we build the foundation for them in our programming and our coaching and mentoring, but also when they're going through actual pipeline, when they're downrange, they're going to be falling back on what they learned at second phase, third phase, or even in first phase when they have to make it through something challenging like Hell Week. But yeah, you will always fall back on your procedures. So I think if the foundation of what you're training for, whatever your goals are, if you can build a solid foundation, you will always fall back on that. You'll have something to rest on. But if you just want to just wing it and wing life and just try things and not commit, I think that's when people get a little frustrated, because they haven't put the work in. They don't want to set the foundation for themselves, and then they expect to win or be great at something. You need to win downrange whenever things are going south and you're getting shot at, or you need to be able to mentally go back to procedures and be able to take care of business. And the last thing you want to happen in that moment is for you to freeze or just forget procedures because you didn't practice, you didn't train, you didn't have the foundation. So I think that's one of the most important things, is being okay with let some time happen and building that foundation. And then when it happens, when you're downrange, things go south, you're able to fall back on your training. I remember being on a mini sub mission, and we trained for like buddy rescue. So if the diver goes down, what you're supposed to do in that moment. Yep. And we were on a mission. This is out in the middle of the ocean, and one of our divers. So there's a couple guys can sit up front. We have two in the back. We're up to four in the back of the mini sub, and one of the guys was feeling sick. He was just feeling ill, and there was no hesitation in what we did in that moment because we had trained for a down dive, or we had trained for the worst case scenario, and we were able to take him back and take care of him without any issues because we had already drilled it. So when you get back to the main host platform, you're able to take him out, you're able to take care of him in a very timely manner. Everybody knows what's happening, and there's no question about what the next step is. And so it's the same thing in your training, just making sure you have a foundation to fall back on, seeking guidance, seeking the right type of training and mentoring, and then you can build from there, from anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You fall back to your level of training, which I'd like to ask the next question. It's a little bit confronting, a little bit tough to blow your own horn, but what's the difference between what you guys do with Warrior Calling and what the Navy gives you to prep? I mean, what's the difference between the two things there? Because you were actually a BUD/S instructor, highly likely you or some other BUD/S instructor has input into what the Navy is going to put out to prep. What's that key difference between what the Warrior Calling does and what the Navy will give you as a package? Hey, go and do this and then come to BUD/S.
Yeah, there's quite a big difference. The main one is that the Navy will look at just a few physical standards prior to somebody actually being accepted to the pipeline. So it's a basic swim, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, and a run, and just some basic standards. And that's really what the Navy looks at initially when somebody wants to be a SEAL. They have to pass a basic physical standard, which I have them right here in front of me and I look at all the time. Just an optimum score would be a 930 on a 500-yard side stroke, 75 plus push-ups, 75 plus sit-ups, 15 plus pull-ups, and then a 930 on a 1.5 mile run. So that's just the optimum score. So the Navy looks at those types of scores initially, and then BUD/S prep is designed to help somebody. So they have to go through Navy boot camp. So they get accepted, they have to pass the physical standard, which I said, and then they go through Navy boot camp, and then they show up to BUD/S. Well, there's pre-BUD/S, which we're talking about, and they try to help guys be at this certain level of fitness, but there's only so much they can prepare the guys for because they're only there for a handful of weeks. They learn how to lift a log safely, they learn how to climb a rope safely, they learn how to run with the boat on their head, how to do a base swim. So maybe they're working up to a mile swim with fins on. So just that basic level during a few weeks to prepare them for BUD/S, but it's really not enough over time to develop them for the volume of runs where they're running a lot every week. They can easily run through 20, 30, 40 miles in a week. And it's just the volume of that on their body, they're not ready for it. And BUD/S prep isn't long enough to get somebody from the basic level to being able to make it through, in my opinion. I just don't think it is. So that's why I recommend that people train for a while. They train for maybe a few years. I trained for 3 years when I was preparing to go to BUD/S because I knew that I wasn't ready. I knew that mentally I wasn't prepared. My body certainly wasn't. So I recommend you train for as long as it takes so that you can master the basic physical standards. That way, when you enter and then you go through BUD/S prep, you're already ready to go. Instead of thinking, I'm going to show up to BUD/S and then train to be a Navy SEAL, you have to show up and be ready to perform because the instructors are looking for guys that want to be there. Did you prepare? Are you physically fit is one big indicator. If they can't pass a timed run in week 1, well, then that's a hit on their paperwork. And if they get too many strikes, then they're gone performance wise. So I recommend that you take the time you need in order to prepare because there's no point in jumping the gun before you're ready and showing up and then deciding it's not for you or just physically not being ready for it. The attrition rate is pretty darn big. I think 90% attrition rate right now in the last couple classes where they'll start with 180 people and they'll be down to 20 people in about 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big attrition rate, and that's just within the first block of training. So yeah,
there's a big difference between just that minimum standard and the actual proper preparation.
Exactly.
I've got a couple of questions, probably personal questions, because like I said, I didn't actually have a chance to ask a SEAL about SEAL stuff. So you talked about cold water immersion, but then you talked about the at phase 2 where they tie up your hoses, do you guys wait till that person exhales and then tie their hoses up, their breathing hoses?
Well, depends on, yeah, at some point we do. You want to see how they're going to react when it's not very comfortable.
Yeah.
So it might be something like that, or it could just be that you tie a knot in their hose and they have to lean way, way, way back in order to reach it, where the mouthpiece is over here, and they're having to check their gear with one hand, and you're looking to see if they're thinking through every step while their mouthpiece is back here. They can't even see their gear that they're going around and making sure everything's tied and properly donned. But yeah, that does happen. There's a first, we build them up to this dive. It's not like they get thrown in the pool and then we try to drown them. There's a progression. Yes, there's a progression to get there.
Yeah.
But that dive, it is a challenging dive. And I didn't pass to my 4th attempt. You get 4 tries at the dive. When I was going through, I had a lot of diving background even beforehand, and I still had a hard time with that particular test, and made it to my 4th attempt and passed it. But it was the greatest feeling ever to move on and not get rolled or dropped from the program. But it's one of those things you really have to mentally stay in the game, because if you miss one little tiny detail during a test, which could last 20, 30 minutes, and you're done. So it's they watch very, very closely. But yeah, that's a fun part of being an instructor, is you're in a very safe environment. They're never in any danger, but you're putting them through some very uncomfortable situations to see how they react.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it blows my mind. I'm not a diver. I'm good with flippers and with fins and a gun on top of the water, but yeah, me and diving don't work too well.
That's how I feel about jumping out of a plane.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll do some skydiving every once in a while, but it's not my cup of tea.
No, I love the air stuff. What you talked about this? You talked about the side stroke. That Navy SEAL side stroke is a very interesting stroke, isn't it? What's the best way for someone to learn that?
Yeah, it's the reason they do it is just it keeps a low profile in the water, so you can be inserted off the coast and be able to make your way in. You can go long distance with the stroke, and it's a very low profile. Your arms not swinging out of the water. It's if you've watched any of the Stu Smith's videos, he's one of the legends of BUD/S prep and training people. I read his book when I was training, and he does video analysis on YouTube, and if you look at some of those videos, you're not going to see somebody normally, if they're a good swimmer in the side stroke, you're not going to see them with their arm way out of the water. They're going to be very, very streamlined. They're in a glide position, and yeah, you're going to be partially on your side. You can roll to your belly, and it takes a little bit of time for some guys to learn the proper technique. It does. So what we do in how I coach them is they'll take a video on their phone, and I'll watch them from a side profile. I'll have a lifeguard or somebody at the pool take a video of them going back and forth, and then they send that video into me and the other coaches, and we all provide feedback on how they can get faster, maybe hold their glide, or whatever it is that they need to do in the stroke. And it is remote. A lot of our programming is remote. So somebody might be in Florida or across the states in New York, and I'm coaching them from California, but all I'm doing is just reviewing their video on a weekly basis. And you'll see guys get faster. If they implement and they learn, they're gonna put the work in, and you'll see them get faster, which is pretty cool. We do the open water training here as well in Coronado, but that's all with fins, and we can coach them one-on-one. But yeah, it's crazy to see these guys learn how to do it, because it is challenging at first to learn how to do that side stroke.
Yeah, look, I challenge anyone that's listening or watching, just Google Navy SEAL side stroke. And that's why I wanted you, because you coach remotely, how do you get them to do it? So you recommend Stu Smith if they're someone that's not wanting to become a SEAL, just wants to learn that, but really clever if with your video analysis with the coaching programs.
Yeah, it's helped out. We've had one guy we were working with, he went from a 12-minute on his 500-yard side stroke to a sub 8 minutes on his 500, and that was within the 12 weeks time frame. So it can happen. And he didn't know what he was doing. He was a swimmer, but he had never done the side stroke before. So it can happen. It works to do the remote programming. Ideally, you have a coach right there in the water or next to the pool, but the next best thing is that video analysis, because it works as long as you implement.
Awesome. Have you ever had anybody that's overseas, going for overseas units come through your training program? Is it all just related to US Navy?
Right now, just US Navy. We've had a lot of interest from outside the US, but we haven't gotten anybody set up yet. The big reason is that the SEAL Ready program, that program in particular, is just for people in the US. So since we just launched our second program, which is for anybody, the Forged Elite program, that's for anybody in the world. We haven't, since it's just basically a new program, we don't have anybody that's from outside the US in that yet, but it's an opportunity for folks if they wanted to step into that programming. But yeah, the SEAL Ready program is just for US citizens.
So the Forged Elite is your second program?
Yes. Yeah, that's for anybody.
And the reason I say that is because I just went to talk about your website and IG, and hasn't the world changed? This stuff's international now, isn't it?
It's crazy. Yeah, I know. I think I really dislike social media. I think it's a huge distraction, but at the same time, it's allowed what we're doing to get to more people. So if we can help more people using this platform, I'm gonna use it whether I like it or not, because that's where people are, and I want to help more people. So it is what it is. But yes, we do have a website and we have a social media that has been growing. My sister has helped me. She works with me. She goes to the gym. She trains at the gym also, and we help with the video. And so the social media is done through her, and she's really helped me be able to show what's going on. We have events throughout the year as well that we work with our clients at. We just had one a couple weeks ago, and so social media has allowed us to at least showcase a little bit of what we've done, which is cool.
Look, and you just almost, I can almost quote you there. I'm just thinking back to GBRS, and I wore the closest thing I got to a SEAL shirt today. This is a shirt done by some former Navy SEALs. This is from Tribe Skates, and the reason I speak to that is because they employ only Gold Star Foundation kids.
Yes. Yeah. Gold Star Foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. Big shout out to those guys.
Yeah. Amazing.
GBRS, everybody wants to see what you do, Joe, and you said showcase what you do, because they want to see what you do and then they want to have you teach them. And it's phenomenal, the international reach. I'm here in Perth, Western Australia. I interviewed the guys. That's cool. But my partner said she saw some dude down the road wearing a GBRS shirt the other day. It's like, what the hell?
It is crazy how the world has gotten smaller over the last 5-10 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
yeah, that's funny.
I do think that social media done right, and you're obviously doing it well, because that's how I saw you, does show people what you do, and then people go, well, that's really cool. I want a piece of that. So that's why I touched on the international side, because I think it'll be something that really grows. And Mark Devine's a good example. He's international with the things he's done, but yours will really take off. So for the listeners, we're going to put in the show notes. We talked about the warriorcalling.com already. And brilliant, because it's that easy on Instagram as well, the Warrior Calling.
Yes, sir.
Look, it's been amazing to hear a snippet. It's not so much your story, but really a snippet about what the Warrior Calling does. And I've hit all the points I wanted to hit, which is the difference between buds and civilian and what you guys do. And we went from the physical side to the actual mental preparation and so on, which is great for you to train the next generation of warriors. The last thing I'll touch on, you probably didn't know this one was coming, was the transition between military and civilian. That's a big, it encompasses a lot, that word. So what did you find difficult, and then what helped you? And I think I know the answer, but what did you find difficult, and what helped you transition from being a hard charging Navy SEAL into a civilian operator?
Probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I would not, I'm still going through it, to be honest. But yeah, it was a big change. It was a big change. I knew at that 10, 11-year mark in the military that it was time for me to move on. So I did everything they say to do, which is get your LinkedIn profile good to go, because you're going to have to go out in the real world and get a job. And I went to 2 different military transition type of programs to help me learn how to be a human again, learn how to be a civilian, and how to write a resume and how to talk to people properly and all that emotional intelligence training, just trying to help me prepare. I got out, and actually we moved from San Diego to England for about a year. My wife went to school out there, and I was working on my master's degree as well. But to be honest, it was very, very difficult in 2018. After I got out of the military service, I was just trying to find my way. I was trying to find a job, any job, especially when we moved to England, and jobs are hard to come by because you're not even a citizen. You're not a part of their country. So they didn't want to hire me in many jobs. I did get an internship at Goldman Sachs as an intern in London, and we lived just north of London. So I would take the train down and work there, doing 10 hours in front of a computer, just trying to learn if this is what I want to do with my life next. Is going to finance and banking at Goldman Sachs. And to be honest, after about 3 months of doing an internship there, I called it quits. I was just, you know what, this is not working for me. I'm not happy. It's just not a good fit for me. So we moved back from England after that year where my wife finished her school and I finished out my master's as well. And then we moved back here to San Diego in California, and I had to land a job. I had to find something because we had some money when we went to England. We didn't have any when we came back. So it was starting over from the ground up. So I had to get a job. So I actually reached out to one of the old military transition programs that was helping me go through this and transition to become a civilian. And I said, hey, I'm here in San Diego. And they said, well, there's a job here in some real estate. And I said, well, I've never done real estate before. I don't know where to start. And they said, don't worry, we'll go to have you do the interview and see if it's a good fit. And they hired me. It was a real estate research company here in San Diego. So I got my job in 2019. And this is like mid 2019 is when I got hired. And that was a big deal because I finally landed my first real paying job after military service, which was a huge, I proved it to myself that I could actually do two things. I could be in the military, be in the SEAL teams, and I could also be out and get a job. So it was a big deal for me. It was also a very, very scary time because I had a family to feed. We had a baby on the way, and I needed a job. So I was like, I got to get this. So I did land the job. But during that time, I was here in San Diego, and guys were reaching out to me, and they wanted to be trained to be a SEAL. I knew in the back of my mind that I was going to move on from that job, that 9-to-5 job, and do my own thing and help these guys 100% of the time. And in 2020, this is during the pandemic. This is probably the worst time to quit your job. I decided to quit my 9-to-5 and go all in on being a coach and being a mentor and setting up the program we have now. But I had to commit to that, and I had to go all in on that, and I had to turn my back on the other job. So I know there's a lot to say there, but I really want to say this. You're going to be fearful and you're going to be scared to death. I've been more scared as a civilian out of the military than I was in the military at some points. Obviously there's scary moments in the military when you're on target and things are going south, but as a civilian, when you have a family, things change, and you just got to put food on the table. You got to take care of your family, and transition was hard, and it still is challenging for me. That's probably why I'm still coaching, is because I feel the draw. There's the brotherhood. I'm here in San Diego. We're right in the middle of it with Coronado. We train guys right next to Buds. I want to be here for the next generation of warriors to help train them up, and I think it's also personal for me too, because I believe in it. I had an amazing career in the SEAL teams. If I wanted to go back right now, I wouldn't be able to due to some medical things going on. I can't ever serve again or in the reserve. So the next best thing for me is to be a coach and a mentor. So that's what I've committed to doing. And it's been super rewarding.
I think you've found your purpose, which is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I was scared that I wasn't going to find it, and it just sort of grew and developed, and there it is.
Oh man, what a story. And I interview guys on transition like the whole show, and in that 5 minutes, Joe, you've really summed it up. Nick Cordwell, Australian SAS, owns the Mill Gym here in Perth, and he does what you do, trains guys up for special operations forces, SWAT and all that. So literally exactly what you do. Started that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He said the same quote. He said, harder than war. Transition's by far the hardest thing he's ever done, and he's been to war.
Yeah.
But thank you for being so open for a start. Failure at one thing, literally quitting on that job, and then going to the actual other job, success. There's some you get a sense of achievement that you got that job in real estate, but then you bailed on that because you knew somewhere deep down you were driving towards your purpose. And that's what transition is about. It's not about getting a job, it's about finding your new identity, that new chapter of your life, and finding your purpose to make you happy.
Yeah, 100%. I can't live life without any direction or any goal. And I think that's a big problem with people transitioning out of military or being in a professional sports athlete. Yeah, it's a very hard transition, both of those, military or an athlete. And you just have to try to find that next calling or the next purpose of your life, because it's okay to say that things have changed, that you can't go back. You don't want to go back. Now here you are. What is that next goal for you? What is the next chapter of your life? I think the biggest thing as I get older, I'm actually, my birthday's on the 27th of May. So in a few days, I'll be 37. I'm not crazy old, not crazy young, just kind of in that area of like, hey, there's a season for everything. There's a time when you're going to be tired a lot. You're going to be working crazy hours, maybe multiple jobs. Maybe you're training to be special forces or going to buds, and you're going to be very busy. You're going to be very tired. Or maybe you're having kids, and that's another chapter, right? And maybe you're landing your first job. Just be okay with there being different chapters of life, different seasons of life, because if you just try to stay in one and life keeps moving and transitioning, you're going to have a very hard time because you're not able to stay in that chapter when you need to transition on. So for me, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to be a SEAL anymore. I'm not a SEAL anymore. I'm a veteran. I served. I was a SEAL. Now my life has changed and I have different goals. I still earn that trident every single day.
Yeah.
But I have to be okay with there being seasons in life and being in the next chapter of life. Because if I just hold on to what I've been in the past, then I'm never going to help people and I'm never going to grow as a human. So that's the biggest transition thing that I've noticed for me, is just being okay with the chapters of life.
That's brilliant. What a great thing to end on. And as you're saying that, I just realized why and what a cool name you guys have got, which is the Warrior Calling. And it encompasses so much. So congratulations on choosing such an awesome name for what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what the name. That's what it's for.
Man, that's awesome.
That's our goal.
Look, Joe, thanks so much for your time. It's been amazing sharing your story. Hopefully I've done you justice. And I often say at the end, if we've just helped one person with one thing they've heard during the show, then I like to think I've done my job. But look, it's just great to have you on. I definitely, anyone that's listening, check you out. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Damien. Yeah, it's been great sharing with you. And man, it's been great to discuss this stuff, because a lot of people don't want to, they're not quite sure where to go for information, and you're the guy to go to. So I appreciate you having me on today. Thank you.
Oh man, absolute pleasure. We'll speak soon.
Alrighty.